Welcome to today's historical deep dive. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. This is not a tale of kings and castles, but of the dirt beneath their boots, the fear in their eyes, the endless, grinding truth of their days. It is the story of you. Were you born into a world where the margin between living and dying was thinner than a shroud? If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, it helps more than you know, letting us unearth more moments from history's quiet corners. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Would you be a farmer, bound to the soil? A weaver, listening to village gossip? A healer, trusted with secrets and lives? Or perhaps something else entirely? This journey is not just about them. It is an invitation to be them, if only for a moment. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. You wake not gradually, but sharply, pulled from the shallow well of sleep by the cold. It is a physical shock, a sudden enemy in the pre-dawn dark. The straw rustles beneath you, a dry scraping sound like brittle bones, as you shift, desperate for a pocket of residual warmth against the biting air that creeps through the gaps in the rough-hewn walls of your small hut. It is a draft that ignores intention or hope. Simply is. Your breath hangs in the tiny space you share with the few chickens you own, huddled on their perch like feathered statues against the chill. And perhaps a piglet, if you're lucky enough to have one small enough to bring inside tonight. Its soft snores, a counterpoint to the wind's low moan. The fire, banked last night with precious effort and dwindling fuel, is long dead, a heap of gray ash, giving off no warmth at all. Only the ghost of comfort. The hunger is the next thing that asserts itself, a dull ache that settles deep in your belly the moment your mind becomes aware. A constant, low-frequency hum in the background of existence. It's a familiar companion, sometimes a roar demanding immediate attention, sometimes a whisper you learn to ignore through sheer necessity, but always, always there. You swing your legs over the edge of the low, simple bed, your bare feet finding the packed earth floor, hard, cold, and unforgiving. The cold bites harder now, creeping up your legs, demanding reaction, urging you to move, to find warmth, to begin the endless cycle of labor needed just to keep this fragile life clinging on. Survival isn't a state of being. It's an active, moment-by-moment verb. You pull on the same rough wool tunic you wore yesterday and the day before, its familiar scratchiness a minor discomfort compared to the gnawing cold. Outside, the first weak light is painting the sky a bruised purple, a somber canvas for the day's unfolding struggle. The village is stirring. You hear a distant cough, sharp and persistent, the clatter of a wooden pail against stone at the communal well, the lowing of cattle being led out to meager pastures by a neighbor already ahead of you in the day's race. Every day begins like this, a stark confrontation with necessity, with the raw, undeniable demands of the body and the land. There is no time for reflection, no space for existential ponderings, only action. You must find fuel for the fire, coax embers back to life. You must break the fast with whatever scraps are left, perhaps a crust of hard bread, maybe a few dried beans, and then you must face the demands of the day. The field awaits, or the animals need tending, or the seemingly endless tasks of simply maintaining existence press in. The weight of it presses down even before you've stepped outside the door. A heavy cloak woven from need and exhaustion. Yet within this harsh awakening, this brutal reality, there is a primal connection to the earth, to the rhythm of light and dark, to the fundamental struggle for survival that links you to every living creature around you. From the scurrying mouse in the thatch to the hawk circling overhead, it is a brutal honesty the modern world has largely forgotten, softened by layers of comfort, convenience, and certainty. You learn very quickly that surviving is an active, moment-by-moment choice, enacted with every breath drawn in the biting air, every muscle strained against the stubborn soil, every meager meal consumed. There is no safety net provided by distant lords or abstract systems, only the rough weave of the community, often frayed and tested, and the strength of your own weary hands, and the silent, desperate hope that tomorrow will be bearable. Was this grim dance with survival truly living, or merely delaying the inevitable descent into the earth? They did not ask. They simply endured. The dawn cracks not through a window, but a gap in the shutter, a grudging slit against the perpetual gloom. You pull the rough wool closer. The walls are earth itself, mud mixed with straw, plastered onto woven branches, wattle and daub, thin protection against the keen wind that still finds its way through countless cracks. Above, the thatch roof is a constant rustle, home to mice you hear scratching just above your head, a damp weight pressing down. This single room is your world, shared with the breathing warmth of your family. Perhaps a goat or a hen tucked into a corner for safekeeping. The smoke from last night's fire still hangs thick, a perpetual gray shroud coating the rafters, the few wooden spoons in their pot, your rough chest holding little more than patched tunics. The hearth in the center is the heart, but it also blinds and chokes before the smoke eventually, grudgingly, finds the hole in the roof. There is no other room, no corner to call solely your own. Your body knows the proximity of others, the shift of weight beside you, the cough in the darkness, the quiet breathing of sleep. Privacy is not a concept that exists here. Every birth, every death, every argument, every moment of joy or sorrow is witnessed. Your family is an extension of your own skin, bound together by necessity, by the sheer, overwhelming physical reality of sharing this confined space. There is no hiding. Shame requires a place to retreat, and there is none. Secrecy is a performance you could never hope to maintain under the constant gaze of those whose lives are pressed as close to yours as bark to a tree trunk. Your identity is not built on owning things, on having a personal retreat. It is built on your place within this knot of people, your role in the work of the day, your hands in the harvest, your voice in the shared prayers before sleep, the way you carry yourself among the handful of other families who form the village. Community isn't an ideal. It's the inescapable air you breathe. It's a profound, bone-deep interdependence forged in dampness and smoke, a shared vulnerability against a world teeming with visible and invisible threats. Think of your own home, its separate rooms, its locked doors, the possessions that define your space. How much of who you believe you are is tied to that separation, that ability to be alone? The peasant living behind walls of wattle and mud understood belonging not through choice, but through absolute, enforced presence. Could you live so exposed, so completely entwined, with no sanctuary but the shared breath of the few people who were quite literally your world? Was this forced closeness a cage, or the only true warmth they knew against the medieval night? Stepping outside, the scale of your life's canvas becomes clear. The fields, not the small garden plot by your cottage, but the sprawling open expanse shared by the village. These are not just plots of dirt, they are the volatile heart of your existence. Your family's strips of land, often long and narrow, lie scattered across this vast commons, their location decided by tradition and necessity, perhaps shifted year to year as the three-field system demands rest for the soil. You walk past your neighbor's strips, seeing the same struggles etched into the turned soil, the same hopes rising with the first green shoots. The land demands everything. Sweat dripping into the dust, muscle aching from dawn till dusk, hands calloused and cracked. With a wooden plow, perhaps tipped with iron if you're fortunate enough to afford it or share the cost, you turn the heavy earth, following behind a lumbering ox or a stronger horse if you share the use of a village beast. Or perhaps, if you are among the poorest, you pull the crude implement yourself alongside your wife or children, a stark, primal struggle against the stubborn soil. The work is backbreaking, repetitive, utterly unforgiving. There is no clock but the sun, no break but exhaustion. This absolute, tangible dependence on the land creates a profound, almost spiritual relationship with nature's cycles. Every tiny seed pushing through the ground is a miracle, a fragile promise. Every hailstorm is a potential disaster of biblical proportions, the wrath of forces unseen, threatening the very foundation of your world. Your entire life, your family's survival, is shaped entirely by the weather's whim, the unpredictable fertility of the soil, the health of the animals that help you work it. There is no buffer, no abstract market protecting you. Your survival is a direct, brutal negotiation with the earth itself. This fosters a deep, instinctual respect for the rhythms of the seasons, a keen eye for the slightest sign in the clouds or the wind, and an ever-present, gnawing anxiety about forces far beyond your control. Superstitions aren't merely quaint beliefs. They are desperate attempts to influence an indifferent world, to appease unpredictable powers through ritual and prayer. Today, most of us are insulated from the immediate, direct consequences of failed harvests. We rely on complex global systems, invisible hands moving food across continents. Can you truly understand the weight of checking the sky for rain or lack of it? Knowing that too much water or too little sun could mean not just hardship, but actual starvation for your children before the next spring. This ancient, visceral connection to the source of life, the soil you walk upon, is a primal human bond, lost to many in the modern age, but etched into the very bones and souls of the medieval world. Ask yourself, could you live bound so tightly to the earth's hard bargain? The air in the hut bites with the morning chill, even through the rough-spun wool. Your stomach rumbles, a familiar, dull ache that has been your companion since childhood. The pale light filtering through the smoke hole signals another day where nourishment is not a given, but a battle hard won. Mealtime arrives, marked less by ceremony and more by the necessity of fueling tired bodies. There is no variety that excites the palate. Your plate, likely just a trencher of stale bread or a wooden bowl, holds pottage. This is the king of your table, a thick, often monotonous stew. It's a humble concoction. Whatever grains survive the vermin and the damp, mixed with the hardier vegetables from the patch. Cabbages, leeks, perhaps some peas or beans if the season was kind. It is sustenance, warm and filling in the moment, but devoid of the rich nutrients your body craves. Bread is the other pillar, dense and dark, made from coarse flour. Every handful of grain you grew had to be taken to the Lord's mill, a heavy stone turned by water or beast, where a portion of your precious yield is taken by the miller, and another by the Lord. It is a tax on your labor, a constant reminder of who truly owns the ground you work and the food you eat. This bread is life, hard-earned and heavily levied. It is not soft or airy. It is solid, requiring effort to chew, often eaten with the pottage to soak it up. Meat is a ghost at your feast, appearing only on rare, almost sacred occasions. Perhaps the village pig, fattened slowly throughout the year, is slaughtered before the deepest chill of winter descends, a communal event. Every part used, salted or smoked to last. Occasionally, desperation or luck might bring a rabbit caught in a snare, or a fowl taken from a hedgerow, but this is fraught with peril. Poaching on the Lord's land is a grave offense, punishable by brutal means. A stark reminder that even the wild creatures are not yours to take when your belly cries out. Every scrap of food, every bone, is treated with reverence, gnawed clean, boiled for broth, stretched as far as it can possibly go. There is no casual snacking, no surplus to be enjoyed for pleasure. Hunger is not merely a temporary discomfort. It is a chronic state, a constant, low-grade torment that lives in your muscles and clouds your thoughts. It sharpens into a desperate gnawing during the lean months, just before the summer harvest, when last year's stores dwindle to dust. It bites cruelly in times of bad weather, blight, or war. This perpetual negotiation with the edge of starvation dictates every decision, every ounce of energy expended. You labor in the fields to eat, and you eat what little you have to labor another day. It is a brutal, unending cycle. Yet this very scarcity forges deep bonds. The sharing of food, even a few morsels of hard bread or a ladle of thin pottage with a neighbor or a traveler, is an act of profound community, of shared vulnerability and mutual survival. To waste food is not merely foolish, it is a sin against God, against your community, against survival itself. It is an insult to the very earth that begrudgingly yields your sustenance. This ingrained understanding of how precarious life is makes every successful harvest, no matter how modest, a cause for deep, genuine, almost spiritual celebration, a brief, glorious reprieve from the shadow. Consider the world you inhabit now, where food is available at the turn of a corner, in quantities that stagger the imagination. The sheer, bewildering abundance in our markets, flown from distant lands, processed and packaged beyond recognition, would be an unimaginable miracle to a medieval peasant. Would they weep at the sight? Would they simply collapse, overwhelmed by such effortless plenty? Does this ease of access make us complacent? Do we truly grasp the complex web of effort, resources, global systems, and sheer luck required to put food on our plates today? The medieval struggle for daily bread, the constant ache in the belly, highlights a fundamental human truth we often forget: our profound dependence on the fragile bounty of the earth, and the terrifying vulnerability that comes when it withholds its gifts. When basic sustenance is a daily gamble, how does it change your understanding of morality, of charity, of what it means to be alive. When scarcity is the norm, is hope a luxury or a necessity? You rise with the sun, not to the quiet of your own yard, but to the sound of neighbors' voices already drifting over the low walls. The air carries the scent of your neighbor Alara's hearth smoke, mixing with your own. You are not an island here. You are a single thread, pulled taut and strong in the tightly woven fabric of the village web. Your neighbors are not distant acquaintances. They are the very air you breathe. Your kin, certainly, but also your co-workers in the fields, your social circle squeezed onto a bench outside the alehouse. And yes, sometimes the sharp thorn in your side, your rivals for land, for influence, or simply for the best spot at the communal oven. Life is lived under 1,000 watching eyes, intensely public, inescapably communal. You work the heavy soil side by side, the rhythm of the hose, a shared beat against the earth. You pool resources for the great shared plow, haul wood together for the baking fire. The scent of everyone's bread mingles as it bakes in the village oven, a daily ritual of shared sustenance. Weddings are celebrated with the entire village crammed into the barn, drunken dancing until dawn. When the bells toll for a death, the grief is a collective shroud, wrapping itself around every soul. There is no anonymity here, none. Everyone knows everything. Your strengths chopping wood, your weaknesses holding your ale. The whispered secret of your cousin's illegitimate child, the public shame of your uncle's debt. This unrelenting social pressure is a double-edged sickle. On one side, it's a powerful support system. When illness lays you low, hands you didn't ask for appear, bringing broth, tending your animals, watching your children. When the harvest demands every last ounce of strength, neighbors labor beside you, knowing you will do the same for them. In grief, arms embrace you, voices keen with you. You are never truly alone in suffering or in joy. But the other edge is sharp. You are bound, not by written law usually, but by generations of village custom and the ceaseless watchful eyes of others. Gossip is not idle chatter. It is a weapon, honed sharp by boredom and envy. Reputation is paramount, a fragile thing that can shatter over a careless word or a perceived slight. Deviate too far from the norm, fail to pull your weight, or earn the village's disapproval, and you risk ostracization. To be cast out, even subtly ignored, is a terrifying prospect in a world where survival literally depends on the hands and hearts of those around you. Think of the communities you belong to today. Are they geographical, online, formed around shared interests or beliefs? You can choose them, leave them, mute notifications. The medieval village was a complete, inescapable ecosystem of human connection. While we champion individuality and fiercely guard our privacy, the medieval peasant understood, deep in their bones, the primal human need for belonging, for mutual aid, for the shared, raw experience of life's joys and hardships played out on a public stage. They bent, they conformed, they traded privacy for safety. Does our modern independence, the freedom to be unknown, sometimes come at the cost of that deep, inherent sense of being an indispensable thread in something larger, something woven not just of choice, but of shared necessity and inescapable fate? The sound comes first, a deep, resonant dong that vibrates through the soles of your worn boots. It's the church bell, marking another hour, or calling you to prayer, or maybe tolling for someone lost to the cough or the fever. At the heart of your small world, often the only stone building sturdy enough to withstand the wind and rain, stands the church. It is far more than just a place of worship. It is the center of your spiritual, social, and sometimes administrative life. On Sundays and feast days, you join your neighbors, shuffling into the cool, sometimes damp air inside. The priest faces the altar, his back often to you, muttering words in Latin, a language few truly understand. Yet, you feel the weight of ritual, the hush of reverence, the pervasive sense of the divine presence within these walls. Incense hangs heavy in the air. Candles flicker, casting dancing shadows that seem to make the crude paintings of saints on the walls come alive. The church bell dictates the rhythm of your year, too. Its calendar dictates the rhythm of the year, interrupting the endless cycle of labor for holy days, reminding you that life isn't just about plowing fields or mending roofs. Faith is not an abstract concept. It is a lived reality, woven into the fabric of your waking moments and sleeping fears. God is a king in heaven, distant, yet ever watching. The Virgin Mary and the saints are closer, figures you pray to for intercession, for help with a sick child, a failing crop, or protection on a journey. And the fear of hell is visceral, a terrifying prospect described in vivid, horrifying detail by the priest during sermons. Flames, demons, eternal torment. You seek forgiveness for your sins, participate in processions carrying relics or symbols of faith, and contribute your meager earnings to the church coffers, a sacrifice for your soul and the upkeep of this vital center. The church provides a framework for understanding the world, offering explanations for illness, God's will, or punishment for sin, hardship, and death, and promising salvation in the next life, a powerful solace when this one is so brutal and short. It tells you who you are, where you stand in the cosmos, and what awaits you if you live rightly or wrongly. This comprehensive worldview, while perhaps limiting in some ways, offered immense comfort and order in a chaotic existence. While modern society offers diverse paths to meaning, science, philosophy, personal fulfillment, the medieval experience highlights a deep, perhaps unchanging, human need for a narrative that transcends daily struggle, for a sense of purpose that goes beyond mere survival, and for a connection to something divine or transcendent. How do you find meaning and order in your life today? Is it through faith, science, philosophy, or something else entirely? Ponder the medieval churchgoer, finding their entire cosmology handed to them, providing both terror and immense hope in equal measure. Was it faith that saved them, or fear of what came after? Your hands, they are not soft. They are the record of your life, etched with lines only dirt and sun can draw. Calloused hills rise at the base of fingers. Cracked valleys scar the knuckles. Often they are stained, the rich, dark earth clinging stubbornly, or the stark, coppery tang of blood from a cut sustained against a rough branch or a slipping blade. These are not hands made for fine lace or delicate scripts. They are hands that know the earth, intimately, painfully. Your tools are extensions of these hands, simple yet sacred. Feel the worn wood of the hoe handle, polished smooth by generations of sweat. The specific weight of the iron head biting into the soil. The sickle, its curved blade sharpened painstakingly on a stone, sings its own harsh song as it bites through grain stalks, demanding a precise, rhythmic swing that spares your back while maximizing the harvest. A spade, a rake, a heavy scythe for cutting hay or coarser growth, a flail for the brutal dance of threshing grain on the barn floor. Each is a partner in survival. They are not disposable commodities. They are precious, often made or repaired by your own village craftsmen, maintained with fierce care, passed down from parent to child, carrying the ghosts of labors past. This is not a life of abstract thought or distant management. Your body is the primary engine of your survival. There is no work in the modern sense of a job title or a task list on a piece of paper. There is only the concrete reality of tasks completed by your own effort, measured in sweat and muscle ache, the furrow plowed, the wood chopped, the grain harvested, the ditch dug, the roof thatched. Your existence is a constant physical conversation with the material world. You know the texture of soil like a lover knows a face, whether it is heavy clay, light sand, or rich loam. You understand, on a molecular level almost, the strength needed to cleave wood, the exact point when grain is ripe and brittle, the resistance of stubborn roots. There is a profound, brutal dignity in this direct engagement. You see the immediate result of your effort, the row of planted seeds stretching behind you, the pile of cut wood growing steadily. There is a clear, undeniable connection between your exertion and the possibility of food on your table, warmth in your home. And yet, the outcome is often meager, precarious. A single storm, a blight on the crops, a lord's unreasonable demand, and your monumental effort can crumble to dust. It is an irony woven into the fabric of this existence. Maximum effort, minimal security. Contrast this relentless physicality with the lives so many live today. How many hands now work directly with the earth, with wood, with stone, with the raw materials essential for sustaining life? Most modern work is intellectual, digital, service-based, abstract, detached from the physical process of creation or sustenance. The medieval peasant's life was a constant, unavoidable reminder of the physical foundation of existence. A world built and maintained by sheer human muscle and simple tools. It invites us to reflect on the fundamental value of manual labor, the quiet satisfaction of creating something tangible with one's own hands, and the deep well of human resilience and endurance required to face such demanding physical tasks, day after day, season after season. Ask yourself, in a world stripped bare of technology, where only hands and simple tools remain, what would your hands build? The cold has retreated, but the memory of gnawing hunger remains. Now the earth softens underfoot, a scent of damp soil and possibility rising. Spring explodes, not gently, but with a frantic urgency. Your body, weakened by winter scarcity, must suddenly leap into action. Plowing is backbreaking, the oxen slow and stubborn. You grip the wooden handles, forcing the furrow, every ounce of strength poured into the soil. The precious handfuls of seed feel like tiny, fragile promises. This is the season of desperate hope, a gamble against the indifference of the sky. Will the rains come? Will they be too much? Will late frost steal the tender sprouts? Your life hangs on these tiny seeds, on the unpredictable whims of nature. Summer arrives, a period of anxious watching. The crops grow taller, a sea of green swaying in the breeze. You walk the fields daily, eyes scanning for blight, for pests, for the first sign of wilting under a too-hot sun. Prayer feels less like devotion and more like a constant, bargaining plea. Saint Isidore, protector of farmers, is invoked daily. Hailstorms, like sudden violent acts of God, can flatten a season's work in minutes. Drought turns hope to dust. Every cloud on the horizon is either a blessing or a threat. There is no middle ground, only the extreme possibilities of abundance or ruin. Then comes the harvest, the brutal communal climax. Weeks of relentless toil, from sunup to sundown, everyone in the village working together. Men sieve the grain, women bind the sheaves, children glean the fallen stalks. The air fills with dust and the smell of ripe grain. Your muscles scream. Your hands are raw, but there is a grin satisfaction in the rising stacks of sheaves. This is the moment of truth, the buffer against the coming lean months. Success means survival. Failure means cold, hungry death for your family and neighbors. It is a period stripped bare of niceties, focused solely on the primal act of gathering sustenance. An irony, perhaps, the abundance of harvest does not bring relaxation, but the most intense, body-breaking labor of the year. Winter descends, wrapping the world in a shroud of white and silence. The fields are barren, the trees skeletal. This is the season of relative rest, huddled indoors around meager fires. But it is also a time of gnawing anxiety. How long will the grain last? The stored vegetables and salted meat diminish daily. Sickness finds purchase easily in the damp, cold huts. A cough quickly turns deadly. The long nights are filled with worries about empty bellies and the specter of famine. You look out at the snow, praying spring will return before the last sack is empty. Yet as the days slowly lengthen, as the snow begins to melt, a flicker of that desperate spring hope returns, resilient and persistent, completing the ancient, unending circle. Does your own life feel like a linear path of guaranteed progress, each year building predictably on the last? Or can you recognize moments of cyclical reality, periods of intense output followed by necessary rest, seasons of growth and letting go? The medieval peasant's life was a profound, undeniable truth. Life is bound to natural rhythms, to cycles of abundance and scarcity, health and sickness, hope and fear. It forces us to question our modern illusion of total control and continuous upward trajectory. Can acknowledging these cycles in ourselves, the seasons of creativity and reflection, work and rest, gaining and losing, offer a different kind of meaning, a deeper connection to the fundamental pulse of existence? The air bites your bare fingers as you scrabble for kindling near the edge of the wood. The sun hasn't cleared the horizon yet, but the chill of a medieval morning bites deep. You are perhaps 5, maybe 6 years old, old enough to understand the gnawing emptiness in your belly when the larder is thin, old enough to know the responsibility settled upon your narrow shoulders is as real, as heavy as the bundle of twigs you now gather. There is no childhood as you understand it today, a separate, protected time. For you, life is a swift river, pulling you into the current of adult tasks almost before you've learned to swim. Infancy was a gamble, a perilous voyage where half your peers vanished before they saw their first full harvest. If you survived the cradle, the clock started ticking. By the age you might now be learning the alphabet or riding a bicycle, you are already an indispensable, though small, cog in the household machine. Your chores are simple but vital. Minding a squalling younger sibling tethered by a crude rope to a table leg, scaring away audacious crows from the fragile shoots in the field by yelling yourself hoarse and flailing stick, herding the grumpy goose to the pond, fetching water from the well, your small bucket heavy and sloshing. Play exists, a fragile bloom squeezed between relentless duties, kicking a ball made of rags, arranging stones in patterns only you understand. But it wilts quickly under the sun of necessity. Education is not found in books or chanting Latin. It is absorbed through your skin, learned by watching and doing, mimicking the steady, worn movements of your parents and neighbors. You learn to spot edible herbs, to mend a torn tunic, to tie a secure knot, because your life and theirs depends on it. This early immersion in raw labor means the concept of a carefree, exploratory youth is alien. You are not shielded from hardship. You are thrust into its heart. Children are not just dearly loved, though many are. They are also vital economic assets, their tiny efforts collectively building the family's capacity to survive another winter. This breeds a fierce, perhaps joyless, sense of contribution from a startlingly young age, while also exposing you to the full, brutal spectrum of adult struggle, loss, and the constant proximity of death. Reaching the age of 14 or 15 is not marked by celebrations of independence or dreams of higher learning. It is simply the quiet recognition that your body is now strong enough for the heaviest, most relentless labor, the plowing, the harvesting, the building, the true foundation needed to sustain a household of your own. Consider the stark contrast with our modern world, where childhood stretches into the late teens, even 20s, prioritizing formal education and personal exploration over immediate contribution. What was gained and what was lost in that seismic shift? The medieval child, burdened by backbreaking tasks before their bones were set, perhaps forged an unyielding resilience and a profound, practical understanding of the world's demands, a stark, unvarnished view of existence. Yet they were denied the long, slow unfolding of self, the luxury of extended curiosity unbound by immediate need. It forces us to confront a fundamental question. What is the true, essential purpose of childhood? Is it protection and exploration, or preparation for relentless struggle? And what cost do we truly pay for either path? The spring sun warms the thawing earth, but the chill in your bones is from the weight of expectation. Beside you stands the person your family has chosen, not for whispered secrets in the moonlight, not for the flutter in your stomach, but because their hands are strong. Their family holds land adjacent to yours, and the union makes practical, undeniable sense. Marriage is not the culmination of romantic love, but the forging of an alliance, a necessary contract. Two lives are bound together, yes, but primarily two households, two sets of labor, two claims on the precious, unforgiving soil. Your parents' eyes on you are less about your happiness and more about the fields that must be worked, the children that must be born to work them after you. The future secured not by affection, but by synergy. A good marriage, a successful marriage, is measured in bushels harvested, in healthy babies delivered, in livestock successfully raised, in winters survived together. Your days become a rhythm of cooperation, distinct yet intertwined. The man, your husband, tackles the heaviest labor in the fields, breaking ground, sowing seed, swinging the scythe under the brutal sun. You, the wife, are the commander of the hearth, managing the smoky cottage, tending the small garden plot, milking the goat or cow, raising the children, who are, in essence, your joint investment in the future. You mend clothes, bake bread, Preserve what you can. Your world is smaller, centered on the home and immediate village, but no less vital. Neither can truly survive, let alone prosper, without the other. This small unit, this family forged in necessity and shared hardship, is the bedrock of everything. It is your church, your bank, your defense. Loyalty flows inward, fierce and absolute. Your immediate kin come first, always. This interdependence, while offering a shield against a harsh world, is also a heavy chain. Your obligations are paramount. Duty to the family's survival outweighs any fleeting personal whim or desire. The purpose of bringing new life into the world isn't just the simple, staggering miracle of a crying infant. It's the calculation that these small hands will one day lift burdens you can no longer bear, that these lives will provide for you in the rare luxury of old age, that they will inherit the precarious claim to land and continue the brutal, essential cycle. It's a perspective far removed from candlelit dinners and personal fulfillment. The medieval view of family, centered on economic survival and the stark reality of generational continuity, highlights a fundamental, raw human truth. Connection and cooperation aren't just pleasantries. They are survival tools forged in the fire of adversity. It forces us to look beyond our individualistic lens and consider the historical role of the family as a collective striving, an enduring drive to ensure the lineage, the name, the flicker of life continues against the crushing darkness. Ask yourself, in a world where survival depended on shared labor and unwavering loyalty to your small unit, would you define love differently? Would success feel less like personal happiness and more like simply seeing your children reach adulthood? The hacking cough tears through the quiet night. It comes from your youngest child, bundled tight in their straw bed beside you. Fear, cold and sharp, pierces through the lingering warmth of sleep. Sickness. It arrives without warning, a thief in the night, stealing breath, stealing strength. You understand so little about it. It is a fog that descends, a malevolent spirit, God's displeasure, or simply the terrible burden of being mortal flesh. The wise woman down the lane spoke of humors unbalanced, of bad air, but the words offer no comfort against the heat radiating from your child's skin. Remedies are few and often uncertain. You might brew a bitter concoction of herbs you learned from your mother. Willow bark for fever, perhaps, or a poultice of crushed mallow for a chest complaint. These remedies are woven with whispers of magic, protection charms, prayers murmured over the boiling pot. Does the herb work, or is it the fervent prayer to Saint Luke, patron of physicians, that might bring relief? You cannot know. If your village is large enough to have a healer, perhaps a man who understands something of bone setting or bleeding, or an old woman skilled with herbs and midwives' lore, you might seek their aid. They might draw blood, hoping to release the sickness within, or apply salves and poultices that sting and smell of the earth. Sometimes it seems to help. Other times, the patient weakens further, the bleeding leaving them pale and frail. It is a gamble taken in desperation. More often, you turn to the stone walls of the church. Candles are lit before statues of saints known for their healing power. Saint Sebastian invoked against plague, Saint Anthony against the dreaded sacred fire of ergotism. You pray for a miracle, plead for intercession, or simply bow your head in weary acceptance, believing this illness might be God's will, a test of faith, or even a just punishment for sins you may not even know you committed. This profound lack of medical understanding fosters a fierce, desperate reliance on faith and community support. Neighbors bring thin broth, share a warming blanket, offer quiet prayers beside you. Death is not a distant, clinical event. It is a constant, visible presence. Children, especially, vanish with frightening speed, carried off by coughs, fevers, the sudden grip of the flux. You bury them in the churchyard, small mounds that multiply faster than the grain in the fields. You live with this constant, bone-deep knowledge that your body is fragile, a temporary vessel susceptible to forces you cannot see or understand. There is a form of acceptance born of this harsh necessity. You do what little you can with the scant knowledge and few resources available. The herbal tea, the whispered prayer, the neighbor's kindness. For the rest, you surrender to forces unseen, relying on God's mercy and the fragile bonds of human connection. Death is not hidden away behind walls. It is part of the natural cycle, as familiar as the changing seasons, a frequent visitor to every threshold. Consider the astonishing marvel of modern medicine, of sanitation we take for granted, of the expectation of long, healthy lives. We fight death, wage war against disease. The medieval experience reminds you of the raw, fundamental human vulnerability to illness, the terror of the unknown, and the psychological weight of living in a world where sickness and death are ever-present shadows. It prompts a question: how much of our modern fight against death is medical advancement, and how much is simply the luxury of not living with its constant, unavoidable presence in our homes and fields? What does it change within us to accept life's fragility or to desperately battle against it? The ache in your bones is a constant companion, a dull sermon preached by the soil, the loom, the endless mending. But then the bells ring differently. Not the call to prayer, not the toll for the dead, but a peal that vibrates with anticipation. The rhythm of work falters, then stops. It is a feast day, a break. Life is not just the dirt under your nails, the hunger pangs that gnaw like rats in the granary. There are days when the world briefly turns golden, not just brown and gray. On these rare occasions, usually tied to the church calendar, the deep midwinter light of Christmas, the sudden burst of spring at Easter, the heavy bounty of the harvest, your village transforms. The air hums with a different energy. Women bring out their best, perhaps the only piece of cloth that isn't threadbare or patched endlessly. A splash of color, however faded. There is communal feasting, if the harvest was kind, or if the Lord is feeling generous. Bread baked fresh, maybe a bit of smoked meat or fish, a precious wheel of cheese. It is simple fare compared to the distant tables of nobles. But here, among your own, it is a banquet. Music, rough and joyful, spills from a fiddle or a drum. There is dancing, clumsy and spirited, kicking up dust or mud, depending on the season. Stories are told, tales of saints, of local heroes, maybe even whispers of older, wilder spirits tied to the land. Remnants of beliefs the priests try to erase, but cannot entirely. The tavern, if your village is large enough to boast one, offers a different kind of escape. The thick, muddy ale or sharp cider provides a temporary oblivion, washing away the aches, loosening tongues, allowing worries to drift away like smoke for a precious few hours. These are not frivolous moments. They are essential pressure valves, releasing the unbearable strain of daily existence. The rigid lines of class and hierarchy blur slightly in shared laughter and song. These festivals are also deeply traditional, rooted in customs passed down through generations. They are a potent blend of Christian piety and older celebrations of nature's cycles, a quiet acknowledgement that the rhythms of the earth are as powerful as the pronouncements from the pulpit. They reinforce who you are, not just as an individual fighting for scraps, but as part of a continuous line, connected to those buried in the churchyard who danced and feasted on this same ground centuries before. They provide a sense of shared identity, a connection in a fragmented world. You look at your neighbors, faces flushed with drink or joy, children running wild, and for a moment, the crushing weight lifts. These medieval feasts, so starkly simple by modern standards, were profound affirmations of life in the face of omnipresent death, disease, and hardship. They remind us of the universal human need to gather, to celebrate the good moments, however fleeting, to mark the passage of time with shared rituals that strengthen the ties that bind. Ask yourself, is our modern world of constant, easily accessible entertainment, of isolated scrolling through manufactured joy, as deeply nourishing, as vital to the spirit, as these rare, hard-won, deeply meaningful communal feasts? Was their joy purer because it was rarer, purchased with suffering? The sickle bites the earth, heavy and rhythmic. Your back aches, muscles screaming with familiar fatigue. You are surrounded by others, your kin, your neighbors, working the same patch of shared field, the thin soil reluctantly yielding its bounty. But beyond your village cluster, past the scattered trees and the rough track leading nowhere you have ever traveled, sits a different kind of power. A larger structure, stone or stout timber, standing apart. The manor house. It is always there, a weight in your peripheral vision, a constant reminder of the man who owns the ground beneath your feet. You do not own this land. You were born upon it, and you will likely die upon it. You are bound. This binding is not merely symbolic, it dictates your very existence. The Lord demands His share, not just a portion of this hard-won grain you gather now, a hefty tenth, sometimes more, but also chickens, eggs, cheese, whatever surplus your meager efforts might produce. Rent paid not in coin, which is rare and precious, but in the very stuff of your survival. And worse, He demands your time, your strength. The corvée. Right now, your own barley is ripe, crying out for harvest before the weather turns. Every hour spent away from your own field risks hunger come winter. Yet when the bailiff rides through, bellowing the Lord's command, you drop your own tools and march to the Lord's domain, His private fields. You toil there first, under the watchful eye of His men, knowing your own family's supper grows colder with each forced stroke of the scythe on His land. It is a bitter irony, the source of your life, also claiming the work that sustains it. The sheer, grinding unfairness of it settles deep in your bones, a constant ache that no amount of sleep can ease. You are taught this is the way of the world, ordained by God, upheld by men stronger than you. The Lord offers protection, theoretically shielding you from bandits or rival lords, though more often His presence is felt through fines for straying pigs or the heavy hand of His justice in the manor court. You depend on Him to settle serious disputes, to maintain some semblance of order, yet His word is law. His whims can break you. His privilege is absolute. Yours is conditional, always subject to His disposition. A good ward might mean stability. A bad one can mean starvation, beatings, or arbitrary eviction. The surprising insight is not just the brutality of the system, but the way it shapes the very mind. You learn to read the Lord's mood from a distance. You learn silence when injustice strikes. You learn that your worth is tied to your utility, your body, your harvest. There is no grand escape, no legal recourse for the average peasant against the Lord's decree. Upward mobility? A tale for the birds, sung by dreamers. This isn't just economic hardship, it's an existential constraint. It shapes your prayers, your hopes, which are few and simple, and your understanding of power. Ask yourself, if your very existence depended on the arbitrary kindness or cruelty of one person holding dominion over your home and your labor, would you spend your days dreaming of freedom or learning to bend just enough to survive, finding small pockets of dignity in the things the Lord couldn't touch? Your family, your faith, the earth beneath the earth, where the dead rest equally? The Lord's gaze followed you everywhere, shaping your choices, defining the narrow limits of your life. And perhaps, in acknowledging that gaze upon them, they understood something about power, about submission, about the price of life itself, that we have forgotten in our own tangle of unseen masters. The world ends at the edge of your valley. Beyond the last planted field, past the familiar bend in the river, begins the unknown. Your life unfolds within the radius you can walk in a day, to the next hamlet perhaps, or the market town on the designated day. True travel? That is a story for the exceptionally fortunate or the desperately driven. Maybe a pilgrimage to a local shrine, a journey of a few days to see a relic and pray for salvation, a cure, a better harvest. Or if you are tied to the Lord's estate or a merchant family, perhaps a trip to a regional fair, a chaos of smells and sounds and people you'll never see again. For most, though, the parish bells mark the edge of your known universe. News travels not by ink and paper, but by foot and tongue. A merchant stopping to rest their horse might bring rumor of a king's war far to the south. A traveling friar, his robe dusty from the road, might share tales of distant holy sites or the latest pronouncements from the church hierarchy. But these tales are fractured, exaggerated, mixed with local gossip and superstition like water added to thin soup. Is the king winning? Is the plague returning elsewhere? Has the Pope cursed someone new? You hear echoes of events that shape the world, but they arrive as whispers, unreliable and strange. This isolation breeds a profound sense of local identity. You are not just a farmer. You are a farmer from this village. Your loyalty is to your Lord, your priest, and the people who share your struggle against the soil and the seasons. The faces you see every day are the faces of your world. And strangers, they are met with caution. If they are merchants or recognized religious figures, they might be granted a wary welcome in the tavern or monastery. But a lone traveler with no clear purpose, a group of men in mismatched clothes, they could be bandits, or worse, soldiers from a distant war, looking to requisition food or simply cause trouble. The roads, unpatrolled and often overgrown, are dangerous places. Tales of ambush are common cautionary whispers told around the fire on long winter nights. The world outside is painted by these fears and by the lack of knowledge. The deep forest isn't just timber. It's rumored to hold spirits, mischievous or malevolent, perhaps even forgotten pagan entities lingering in the shadows. Foreign lands? They are places of bizarre customs, strange languages that sound like animal noises, and people whose beliefs might be twisted or even demonic. This isn't necessarily hate, though it can curdle into that. It's the instinctive wariness of the unknown, amplified by a life lived within tight, visible boundaries. Your understanding of the world is practical and immediate. How to plow, when to plant, how to mend a roof, which herbs cure a fever, what saint to pray to for rain. Knowledge of the wider world is a luxury, and often a danger. Yet this insularity is also a shield. It forces dependence on your neighbors, strengthening the bonds of community. You share tools, labor, grief, and small joys. The shared culture, passed down orally through songs, stories, and rituals, is a bedrock in an unstable world. The fear of the outsider reinforces the trust in the insider. It's a paradox. The limited world breeds both profound ignorance and a deep, shared understanding of life within that small sphere. We today swim in a sea of information. The furthest corners of the globe are brought into our hands with a tap. We see different faces, hear different languages, witness different customs constantly. Does this vast, effortless exposure truly make us more open, more tolerant? Or does it, ironically, simply broaden the scope of what we might fear or misunderstand, creating new kinds of distance? The peasant's circumscribed life reveals a fundamental human truth. We are wary of what we do not know, and we find comfort, perhaps false, in the familiar. It makes you wonder, does knowing everything connect us, or does it simply multiply the ways we can feel like strangers? The wind whips through the gaps in your cottage walls, carrying with it not just the bite of winter, but whispers you can almost hear. The fire offers warmth, yes, and the rough cross above the door offers solace. But there are other powers in the world, older and less forgiving. Your faith is in Christ, in the saints whose stories you hear from the traveling priest. But the world is also alive with things you cannot see, cannot touch, and cannot fully understand with prayer alone. This is the unseen world woven into the very fabric of your existence. When the cow suddenly goes dry, is it just illness? Or was it the envious glance from a neighbor, the dreaded evil eye? When the fever grips your child despite your fervent prayers to St. Jude, perhaps a nature sprite felt offended by something you did near their ancient tree by the stream. You leave a small offering of milk there sometimes, just in case. It's a small risk for potential peace of mind, isn't it? The priest rails against such superstitions, calls them pagan folly, the work of the devil. But the priest does not live with the daily, baffling uncertainties of a life lived on the knife edge of survival. He is not here when the crops wither for no clear reason, or when a sudden storm appears out of a clear sky. These older beliefs aren't merely quaint traditions. They are a language to explain the inexplicable. They offer a framework for misfortune that science cannot yet provide. A failed harvest isn't just bad luck. It's a curse. A sudden death isn't random. It's the work of a malevolent spirit. And if these unseen forces can harm, surely there are ways to appease them, to protect yourself. You wear a small pouch containing certain herbs around your neck, a charm passed down from your grandmother. You avoid walking under ladders. Who knows what ill fortune might fall upon you? You read the flight of birds, the shape of clouds, seeking omens in the natural world, just as people have done for generations before the new faith arrived. This pragmatic blending of Christian doctrine and folk belief isn't hypocrisy, it's survival. You pray to God for mercy, but you also carry a rabbit's foot for luck when you travel to the market. You confess your sins to the priest, but you also perform a small ritual at the crossroads to ward off evil spirits before a long journey. The Church provides a grand narrative of salvation and sin, a framework for morality and the afterlife. But these older ways offer immediate, tangible, or seemingly tangible, tools to influence the unpredictable, chaotic world you inhabit right now. The unseen world is not an abstract concept. It is populated by entities, malicious or benevolent, capricious or demanding, that can actively intervene in your life. This fosters a worldview where the sacred space of the Church is important, yes, but the whole world is also imbued with spiritual power. The boundaries between the physical and the spiritual are porous, easily crossed by forces you cannot comprehend. And fear of the unknown, fear of these unseen powers, is a constant, tangible presence shaping your decisions, your rituals, your very way of seeing the world. How do you explain the inexplicable? Do you cling solely to the explanations offered by the Church, or do you still look to the whispers of the wind, the old ways your ancestors followed? The medieval peasants' beliefs highlight an enduring human need that resonates even today: the need to make sense of a chaotic world, to find explanations for suffering, and to seek ways, rational or not, to influence fate and find a sense of control in the face of overwhelming uncertainty. Ask yourself, if your child lay burning with fever and prayer brought no relief, would you cling solely to faith, or would you reach for that protective charm, whisper that old rhyming spell, just in case it offered a tiny, desperate hope? Was it faith that saved them when they recovered? Or was it something else entirely? In our modern world, we have science to explain crop failure, medicine for fever, meteorology for storms. Yet, even now, faced with life's enduring mysteries, love, loss, the vastness of the cosmos, the human heart, we still create narratives, cling to superstitions, crossing fingers, knocking on wood, and seek comfort in rituals that may offer no logical explanation, but provide a sense of order or hope. The medieval peasant's world, so different in its specifics, reminds us that this fundamental human impulse to explain, to seek control, to populate the unknown with forces that might be influenced, is a timeless response to the inherent uncertainty of being alive. Your identity is not something you construct. It is largely given to you by birth and your position in the social hierarchy. You are a peasant, a serf, bound to the land and owing obligations to the Lord. Your name, your family, your village, these are the primary markers of who you are. There is very little social mobility. The possibility of rising above your station is almost non-existent, except perhaps through entering the clergy, a path usually closed to peasant children anyway. Your future is largely predetermined by the circumstances of your birth. You are born of the dirt, tied to the furrow. The first breath you take smells of damp earth and wood smoke, the eternal scent of the village. Your name is not a banner of self, but a marker of lineage. You are Thomas's son, Elsbeth's daughter. Your family has worked these same fields, beneath the same indifferent sky, for as long as anyone can remember. Your place in the world is not discovered, it is inherited, a stone set firmly in the ancient wall of the manor. You belong to the land, the Lord, the cycle of the seasons, the authority of the priest. Your future was decided the instant you arrived, a new hand to help with the harvest, another mouth to feed from the common pot, another soul to answer to the Lord and the Almighty. You are a serf. The word itself feels heavy, like the clods of earth you turn. It means you are not free to leave. The manor boundaries are, in many ways, the boundaries of your life. To venture beyond them without the Lord's permission is to risk losing everything. Your patch of land, your home, your very identity. You owe him your labor, days spent working his demancy before you work your own small plot. You owe him a share of your grain, your eggs, your milk. You pay fines for using the mill, the oven, the bridge. These obligations are the rigid framework of your existence, learned through watching, doing, and the occasional sharp correction from the reeve. There are no dreams of distant cities, no plans for a different career. Your path is the worn track from your cottage door to the fields, to the church, to the Lord's hall when summoned. The notion of rising above your station is almost unthinkable, as alien as flying to the moon. The occasional tale circulates. A clever village boy sent to the monastery, perhaps, his life transformed by prayer and parchment. But such stories are rare as saints' miracles, and the path to the clergy is often blocked by circumstance, illiteracy, or the sheer necessity of keeping all hands on the land. Your destiny is tied to the soil, as much as the deep roots of the oldest oak on the common. Yet, in this rigidity, there is a strange kind of stability. There is no agonizing search for purpose, no existential dread about whether you are fulfilling your potential. Your purpose is as clear as the sun rising over the fields. Work the land, feed your family, fulfill your duties to the Lord and the church. Your identity is woven into the fabric of the village, the shared labor at harvest, the collective fear during plague, the communal celebration at feast days. You are a thread in a tapestry, not a solitary figure on a canvas. This collective belonging offers a deep, quiet solace, a stark contrast to the lonely striving often demanded in other ages. But it comes at a cost. The crushing weight of limited freedom, the stifling of individual ambition, the quiet knowledge that your unique talents, if you have them, must largely serve the collective needs of the manor. Compare this rooted, constrained existence to the relentless modern pressure to define yourself, to climb, to choose from 1,000 paths. We celebrate individual achievement, boundless potential, the freedom to be whoever we dare imagine. But does this freedom come with a hidden burden? The anxiety of choice, the fear of failure, the loneliness of building an identity from scratch? The medieval peasant, while knowing hardship and injustice, perhaps experienced less of this internal turmoil. They simply were, their life shaped by forces far greater than their own will. Ask yourself, was it easier to bend to the shape already carved for you, finding peace in belonging? Or is the struggle for self-definition a fundamental human need, worth any cost? Could you surrender the reins of your own path entirely, finding solace in the well-worn tracks of obligation? The wind is a familiar whisper against your ear now, carrying the scent of damp earth, the distant echo of a hammered anvil, the faint, almost forgotten smell of wood smoke from hearths long turned to ash. You stand here, not in the field itself, but in the quiet space left behind, where their footsteps have faded, but the turning of the soil continues. We have walked with them, felt the ache in their hands, tasted the thin gruel, watched the sky for signs of rain, of change, of the devil's influence or a saint's blessing. Their lives, by our standards, were unimaginable in their raw, unyielding hardship. They navigated a world where the line between the seen and the unseen was thin, where community was a tight, necessary weave, sometimes a comfort, sometimes a cage. The future was less a path to be planned and more a series of unpredictable storms to be weathered. They feared the devil's breath on the wind, yes, but still, they planted seeds every spring, a stubborn, illogical act of hope against overwhelming odds. They endured famine that hollowed their eyes, plague that stole their breath, injustice that ground them down, yet found strength in the simplest things. A shared loaf, the sight of a child's healthy cheek, the quiet, persistent act of putting one foot in front of the other, day after brutal day. Have we truly evolved from this struggle, or have we merely rebranded the fundamental challenge of survival? Our fears wear different masks now. Economic collapse, the creeping dread of social isolation, the amorphous weight of existential anxiety. Are they fundamentally less potent, less soul-gnawing than the gnawing hunger, the fear of damnation, or the cold terror of a fevered child? We have traded the shared physical labor of the fields, the communal sweat and song of the harvest, for the isolating glow of screens, the village community for fragmented, curated networks where connection is optional and often shallow. We seek meaning in careers that may disappear, in consumption that never satisfies, in curated online identities, rather than in the undeniable, visceral rhythms of life and death, sowing and harvest, dependence and interdependence. We have gained comfort, control, perhaps a longer average lifespan, but maybe, just maybe, we have lost a fundamental, grounding connection to the earth that feeds us, to the raw, humbling reality of our shared human dependence, and to the profound, quiet strength found in being inescapably bound to others. Look at your hands, not calloused by the plow, but what marks do they carry from your own struggles? What anxieties grip you that are simply modern iterations of ancient fears? Fears of not having enough, of being alone, of losing control. The medieval peasant's life, in all its brutal beauty, its relentless cycle of labor and moments of fragile joy, reminds us of the enduring, almost miraculous human capacity for resilience. It underscores the fundamental, non-negotiable human need for true connection, for a shared burden, for a place in a community. It reveals the timeless dance between hope and despair, played out not on some grand historical stage, but in the quiet, persistent turning of the soil, in the mending of a roof, in the shared warmth of a fire, a dance that continues, in different forms, in the fields of our own lives, even today. They had no legacy carved in stone, but every seed they planted, every prayer they whispered in terror, built the world we now take for granted.